Book review. Never Flinch by Stephen King. Hesitation is cracking the armor. Fear is the door. Never Flinch. Stephen King's Never Flinch is haunting meditation on guilt, fear, and the corrosive cost of silence. Set in the fictional town of Darlow, Maine. Placed with the sleepy charm of Castle Rock and the ancestral dread of Derry. This novel plunges readers into suspenseful blend of psychological thriller, supernatural horror, and small-town Americana. And at just under 500 pages, Never Flinch does what King does best. It builds slow, deliberate burn into chilling crescendo, all while excavating the quiet terror that lives inside people's hearts. This isn't monster under the bed story, though monsters do appear. It's story about what happens when we look away, when we falter, when we flinch, and how a single moment of hesitation can ripple through decades. Plot summary. In Never Flinch, Stephen King returns to familiar terrain. Rural Maine, where secrets linger like smoke and the past refuses to stay buried. The novel follows Caleb Thorne, 61-year-old retired U.S. Marshal, haunted by a fateful moment in his career when he hesitated just long enough for hostage to die. After years of internal torment, Caleb seeks solace in the quiet town of Darlow, population 3,700, tucked between the Penobscot River and dense, brooding pine forests. Darlow seems peaceful, even dull, which is exactly what Caleb wants. He buys a neglected farmhouse on the edge of town, spends his days restoring the place, and talks only to his old bloodhound Rufus and the local grocer Charlie Haskell. But peace mirage when Charlie's 10-year-old son Owen disappears one rainy evening. On the walk home from Little League, the town is rattled, but not shocked. That's because Owen is the fifth child to go missing from Darlow in 40 years, each vanishing on new moon, each case closed prematurely as runaway or misadventure. Caleb, wary of being pulled back into violence, tries to stay uninvolved, until Charlie finds cryptic message scrawled on his front porch in ash. Never Flinch. It's the same phrase that once haunted Caleb's nightmares after the botched rescue years ago. Local police dismissed the mess as prank, but Mara Bennett, an investigative reporter back in town caring for her mother with early onset Alzheimer's, is less willing to let it go. She's been researching the town's dark undercurrent for years. Obsessed with it, as children, as she calls them, together Mara and Caleb form fragile partnership, both haunted by guilt. Hers for abandoning her sister during childhood trauma, and his for the moment that ended life. They each believe that uncovering the truth about Owen may be their last shot at redemption. As they investigate, Caleb and Mara discover that each missing child's family received nearly identical warning before the disappearance. Single word or phrase, often written in ash, carved into wood, or whispered by strangers. These warnings are always followed by new moon. The deeper they dig, the more they encounter Darlow's disturbing lore. Stories of Civil War deserter named Elias Breed, who lived in the forest and claimed to have spoken with something beneath the earth. Breed found a doomsday cult and promised prosperity in exchange for offerings. Much of the town's infrastructure, the bank, the school, even the sheriff's department, was funded by the Breed Foundation established by his descendants. Disturbing pattern emerges. Each missing child is connected by blood, however distantly, to families who arrived in Darlow around the time of Breed's death in 1897. Things escalate when Caleb and Mara find an old mine shaft closed since the 1940s that emits an eerie sulfurous scent and hides a network of tunnels. Deep within the mine, they find Owen dazed and malnourished but alive, hidden in what appears to be a makeshift chapel lit by flickering candles. Nearby, they discover the corpse of a recent follower, Elijah Breed, distant descendant and prepper who believed he was feeding the hunger beneath. Protect Darlow. But Owen insists he wasn't alone in the mine. He speaks of the man with the black mouth, a tall, skinless figure who speaks in riddles and touches your thoughts. Mara begins having nightmares of the same being. King slowly reveals that this creature is an ancient subterranean force. Perhaps alien, perhaps elemental, but deeply connected to human fear. It feeds not just on sacrifice, but on hesitation. The crack in human will, instant of weakness, Never Flinch, Caleb realizes, was literal survival command from Breed's cult, urging followers to show no fear in its presence. In the climax, the mind begins to collapse as the creature tries to emerge during the next new moon. Caleb confronts his past when he's forced to choose between saving Mara or chasing the monster deeper underground. This time, he doesn't flinch. He rescues Mara and Owen, triggering an explosion that seals the shaft forever. The novel ends quietly. Mara writes and exposing decades of cover-ups and corruption. Caleb, injured and weary, just one night without word. His farmhouse is later found empty, Rufus asleep on the porch. In the final scene, child in nearby town receives black postcard, one word, soon. Plot and premise, generational terror and personal redemption. Never Flinch follows Caleb Thorne, a retired U.S. Marshal who relocates to Darlow in search of anonymity and peace after a botched hostage rescue leaves a child dead and his conscience permanently scarred. He buys a farmhouse near the woods with only his aging bloodhound Rufus for company. But just when the dust of his past begins to settle, the 10-year-old boy named Owen Haskell, son of Caleb's only friend in town, goes missing. Owen's disappearance isn't an isolated incident. As it turns out, 5 other children have gone missing from Darlow over the last 4 decades, each vanishing under eerily similar circumstances, near new moon without struggle and with no leads. The only recurring clue, cryptic phrase, never flinch, appearing at each home shortly before the child disappears. Enter Mara Bennett, a sardonic investigative journalist who grew up in Darlow and has returned to care for her ailing mother. Mara has spent years compiling information on what she calls the Ash children, but she's never been able to connect the dots. Until Caleb shows up. Together, Caleb and Mara embark on fraud investigation that uncovers hidden history involving cult worship, an old mining disaster, and quasi-mythical being known as Watcher Beneath, subterranean, fear-feeding entity that haunts the town's collective memory. What ensues is part procedural, part paranormal, part reckoning with the truth, with trauma, and with ourselves. Character development. Broken people facing broken truths. One of King's enduring strengths is his ability to create characters who feel real, who bleed and stammer and love and make foolish choices. In Never Flinch, he presents 2 of his most fully fleshed protagonists in recent memory. Caleb Thorne is steady and restrained. Unlike King's more explosive antiheroes, Caleb is quiet, meticulous, and controlled to fault, until control fails him. Backstory unfolds slowly. The hostage situation gone wrong, the courtroom testimony that exonerated him legally but condemned him morally, and the crushing knowledge that moment's hesitation destroyed life. Caleb's mantra, you can't protect everyone, becomes both shield and curse. His arc isn't about redemption in traditional sense. It's about rediscovering conviction. By the novel's end, when faced with another life or death choice, Caleb acts not out of duty, but out of clarity. His refusal to flinch becomes the soul of the novel. Mara Bennett, on the other hand, is King's sharpest female lead since Holly Gibney. She's acerbic, brilliant, and emotionally guarded, shaped by the guilt of abandoning her sister during traumatic event they buried. Her relationship with Caleb evolves from adversarial to deeply human, layered with mutual respect and quiet camaraderie born from shared pain. Even the side characters, from grieving parent Charlie Haskell to the uncomfortably composed Sheriff Nancy Breen, are textured and believable. The villain Elijah Breed is terrifying precisely because he's almost sane. He justifies monstrous acts with logic that feels sickeningly coherent, reflecting the novel's core theme. The most dangerous evil is the one that wears reasonable face. Themes: fear, guilt, and the price of looking away. At the heart of Never Flinch lies a single, deceptively simple question. What does it mean to flinch? Is it a momentary pause, a failure to act, a moral lapse? King explores this concept from multiple angles. For Caleb, flinching is literal. He didn't pull the trigger in time. For the townspeople, it's metaphorical. They allowed legacy of evil to fester out of convenience. For Mara, it's emotional. She distanced herself from her sister's trauma, choosing avoidance over truth. The phrase, never flinch, becomes sinister mantra repeated by both the town's old guard and the creature beneath the mines. It's not bravery. Indoctrination. An instruction to look away, to sacrifice conscience for conformity. King twists the idea of courage until it resembles cowardice, forcing readers to ask, what are we complicit in when we stay silent? King also examines generational trauma. Darlow's founding families, descendants of Civil War deserter turned doomsday prophet, inherited legacy of complicity and fear. As with it in Pet Sematary, the past is never dead and never flinch. It's merely dormant, waiting to be reawakened by blood and memory. Setting an atmosphere. Darlow as character. The fictional town of Darlow, Maine might be one of King's most chilling creations. Not because of what happens there, but because of what's ignored. Its place where people mind their own were. 5 missing children is tragedy and shrub. King fills the town with eerily mundane spaces. Shuttered fairground, closed iron mine, an old high school auditorium still decorated for dance that never happened. These liminal spaces, haunted not by ghosts, but by memory. There's stillness to Darlow, heaviness in the air, as though the town itself is holding its breath. The underground mine network beneath Darlow serves as metaphorical and literal descent into the town's suppressed history. The deeper Caleb and Mara go, the more unthinkable truths they uncover. Claustrophobic and echoing with unseen voices, the mind scenes are among the most terrifying in the book. Not because of jump scares, but of what they imply about the costs of survival. Supernatural elements. The Watcher Beneath no King novel would be complete without a supernatural antagonist, and Never Flinch delivers one that is both terrifying and ambiguous. The Watcher Beneath is never fully seen, only felt, described in whispers and fragments. It is skinless, towering figure with black mouths that speaks directly into thoughts. It feeds on fear, on hesitation, on doubt. King wisely withholds concrete answers. Is the Watcher an ancient god? An alien, psychic projection of communal trauma? The ambiguity makes it scarier. What we don't know haunts us more than what we do. The creature's power is conceptual. It doesn't need to kill to win. It just needs us to flinch. Structure and pacing. A slow burn that pays off. Never Flinch is structure in 3 parts. Ashes, bones, and blood. The first is slow, deliberate, and heavy on mood. This might frustrate readers seeking quick thrills, but King uses the time to build emotional depth and narrative cohesion. The tension ratchets up steadily in part 2, and by the third, the book barrels toward a gut-wrenching climax. King employs multiple points of view sparingly, primarily with Caleb, but occasionally dipping into Mara's or even young Owen's thoughts. This choice keeps the narrative intimate while allowing key emotional beats to land with precision. Language and style. Classic King with a mature edge stylistically. Never Flinch echoes the tone of Mr. Mercedes and Revival more than the grand-scale horror of The Stand or it. The prose is clean-clipped and less ornate than some of King's earlier work, but when he wants to unleashes devastating beauty. Passage describing Caleb's guilt reads, "It wasn't just a boy he couldn't save. It was the man he'd convinced himself he was. That man died too, faced between one breath and the next." The dialogue sparkles, especially between Caleb and Mara. Their banter balances the book's heaviness with genuine humor, grounding the horror in humanity. Final verdict. One of King's most thought-provoking novels, Never Flinch isn't just horror novel. It's psychological exploration of fear's legacy. It's about the lines we draw, the silences we keep, and the cracks through which monsters slip. Fans of King's more introspective works, Lacey's story, Bag of Bones, will find much to admire, while those craving the dread of it or the outsider will still get their chills, just delivered with more subtlety. While not bombastic as some of his longer epics, Never Flinch may be one of King's most personal feeling novels. It doesn't scream, it whispers, and that whisper lingers. Rating 5/5 recommended for fans of psychological horror, readers of The Outsider, Revival, and The Green Mile, and anyone interested in how fear and the failure to act can echo across generations.